Welcome to the Golden Age of Cardboard podcast, where we remember a time when stacks of cards were held together with rubber bands and Mickey mantles were put in bike spokes. We hope you will enjoy and reminisce as you come along with us as we tell stories about the baseball cards from the Golden Age of Baseball. We will examine the state of the vintage baseball card market and talk to some of the greatest collectors in the hobby. You won't be hearing us talk about any chrome or shiny cards here. Now, to take you on this retrospective journey, here's your host, direct from the shallow end of the gene pool, my son, Mike Moynihan.
Yo and hello everybody, Mike Moynihan here, and welcome to another wonderful episode of the Golden Age of Cardboard podcast. And today we're going to dive deep into a couple of players' careers, both their baseball careers and their cardboard careers. And those two great players are Nolan Ryan and Rod Carew. Two greats. And the reason this kind of idea came to me was I've been getting a lot of Rod Carew stuff lately and just really appreciate his career. He's kind of getting up there in age. Nolan Ryan celebrated his 74th birthday last week, or maybe even earlier this week. And I just kept thinking, we've lost so many greats lately. And the time to strike is when they're still alive, man. Get this stuff, get these players, appreciate their careers while they're still here, because it's never going to be cheaper than it is today to get into their stuff. And hopefully you'll hear some stories tonight about each of these players that maybe inspire you to go look for some of the stuff, maybe pick up a couple of autographs or cards or rookies or you name it. And these are two great players. I'm a big Nolan Ryan fan, and so I'm going to be handling that side of it. But to handle the Rod Carew side, I've brought in a Rod Carew fan, and it's George, who's Diamondyard Sportscards on YouTube. Hey, George, welcome to the show.
Hey, Mike, thanks for having me. I appreciate it. It's really a pleasure to join you. And I'm looking forward to this and talking a little Rod Carew and Nolan Ryan.
Is it ever bad to talk about cards, like ever?
I don't really think so. Therapeutic, love it. Takes me back in time. It's wonderful.
Yeah, and what's great, especially having you on here, first of all, I become good friends over the last, year and a half, 2 years, maybe.
Mm-hmm.
And your collection is, first of all, absolutely awesome. I love it. I love everything about your collection. It's very right up my alley. We're about the same age, so we grew up in the same era. And so we both got to see these two players play a majority of their career and certainly in their glory years, right? So that's why I think we both appreciate them so much.
Yeah, it's definitely, you kind of see the eras, and, we maybe were a little younger when they both were really in their prime, but we got a good chance to see them. And frankly, they actually, faced off quite a few times. And we'll talk about that. And I'm looking forward to hearing what you have to say about Nolan Ryan as well. And this is going to be great.
Yeah, that's awesome. So why don't you tell everybody real quick where they can find you on YouTube or Instagram or wherever you're at, and just how they can check you out.
Well, I've had a YouTube channel for about 3 years, and it's Diamondyard Sportscards. It's on YouTube, and you could email me if you have any questions or anything like that at azdiamondYard@gmail.com. I'm not really on any other platforms, but maybe we'll do that in the future. We'll see. So I really enjoy YouTube and enjoy the relationships that I've been making, like with you, Mike, and all the guys in the community.
Yeah, it's awesome. And I love just everybody has their own little niche and their own expertise, not just on YouTube, but really throughout the hobby, right? And so to glean knowledge from others and to learn and to absorb is one of the funnest things about having a community of collectors, period, right?
It is. And you have these resources as well. And for example, we were just talking about this before the podcast. I picked up a 74 Carlton Fisk autograph, and I wanted to make sure it was legit. I thought it was legit. It's raw. And I texted Mike a picture of it. He texted me back. It's good. So I've got almost an expert opinion there, and so I'll feel pretty good about sending it to PSA. But I've had a lot of other experiences in the community like this. How do you take cards out of screw downs? How do you, what do you think this is going to get on a grade? So it's a great resource, and more importantly, the friendships are really great too.
For sure.
Most important part.
Absolutely. What's funny is, on a podcast, it's hard to connect with people that's your audience, but we're going to try really hard tonight by telling some stories and talking about these two great players. And I want you to start with Rod Carew. I mean, to me, I'll just throw this out there before you just start going nuts on Carew. He was, to me, the best hitter of the 70s and 80s, certainly in the American League, like no doubt, and probably in the entire major leagues. You could argue Pete Rose, but I'd love to hear what your take is on Carew and what made you a fan of Rod Carew.
Well, first of all, the fan part comes. I moved to with my parents, and I was really little. I was 4 years old. We moved to Phoenix, Arizona, and we had no baseball team there. But at that time, Phoenix was growing rapidly, and a lot of people from the Midwest were coming out to Phoenix to live in these new communities. And so one of the older, I found out real quick that if you wanted to get in with the kids in the block, you got to play baseball, you got to play football, and you got to collect cards. So I started doing that when I was like 4. Well, the favorite player, one of the kids, one of the more influential kids on the block, he was from Minnesota, his family was, and they were huge Twins fans. And so not having a baseball team in Arizona, a Major League Baseball team, I gravitated towards that and just heard about how great Rod Carew was. So then I just started to follow him. But, you didn't get a lot of the games at game of the week, maybe Monday Night Baseball. The old Monday Night Baseball would be on sometimes. And so you got a lot of your information through and your pictures through baseball cards. So I started collecting Carew, and then he was really, at his prime in that point, winning batting titles. And, I think it is a good argument that he is the greatest, at least batting average hitter of the 70s. And he's kind of a throwback, a real throwback to the old school guys, a Cobb and Speaker, and those guys didn't hit for too much power, but tried to amass as many hits as possible.
Yeah, he had less than 100 home runs in his entire career, like 92 home runs or something like that. And because I was looking up his stats before we got here, but the most amazing thing that when I looked at his baseball reference page, he made the All-Star team every single season that he played except his last one in 1985. I thought that was insane. Insane.
Yeah, I think there was a common understanding among a lot of the great players at the time that he was, he was the All-Star second baseman for the American League. And I think it started really early because he first came up in April of 1967. And so his Topps card, his rookie card, wouldn't be issued, obviously, until the end of the season. And that's why it's a little bit more expensive, because it's a high number,
right.
Mike, like Seaver too. And that's his most valuable card, typically. Real condition sensitive, because the centering is really bad on the 67 cards, and the fisheyes you get, and the print marks, and the backs are constantly tilted. But anyway, so when he came up, he immediately made an impact. And for example, I've got a card right here. It's a 68 All-Star Carew. And this just shows you right here from the 67 season. So I think right away, he won Rookie of the Year. And so he was already getting awards. But you're right. His home run totals were really low because he was, I think, really tried to focus on just getting as many hits as possible and hitting it where they weren't. Like Willie Keeler used to say, hit them where they ain't.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. And I remember Rod Carew just All-Star teams. And whenever you would vote, remember we used to vote by punching out the All-Star ballots. Remember that?
Yep.
And it was never a question who the second baseman was. Rod Carew, poke the hole in the ballot. And he started, actually, of those however many All-Star games it was, he started all of them but 3, which means he was voted in by the fans. Back then it was complete fan vote. And
got my Carew on right now.
I just loved doing that. I remember that as a kid, like voting on, like it was an honor to get to vote for the All-Star team and put your ballot in the little box at the ballpark, and God, I remember that.
And living in Phoenix, we didn't have a team. So until the Diamondbacks came, I didn't really have a chance to vote unless I went to a ball game in like San Diego or something with my grandfather. But I would always look in the paper. You'd see they'd have the box scores, but then you'd also have I think it was every Sunday they had a lengthy list of all the hitters and their batting averages, and I mean everybody in the league. And then they'd also have the update on the All-Star voting. So that's how I followed it. And then watching Twib notes on Saturdays before game of the week and stuff like that.
Mel Allen.
Yes, sir.
No doubt. So Carew, obviously, you just said it, his rookie card, 1967. He's got cards all the way. His last Topps card is 1986 Topps. And, he kind of bridged a gap. So did Ryan, too, which is going to be fun to talk about. But he was Topps. He bridged a gap into, the Fleer, Donruss era as well. So he's got just tons of cards out there, right?
Yeah, he does. You have to talk about the Carew. Well, first of all, I want to say that this is just my opinion, and I think probably people who are of my age who are collectors probably feel somewhat similarly, that Carew is a real value. He's undervalued in the hobby, I think.
I totally agree. Totally agree.
When you really think about the numbers, 7 batting titles, only Tony Gwynn. Tony Gwynn has 8. Ty Cobb, I believe, has 12. Honus Wagner is ahead of him. So you're talking about somebody who is mentioned with those names in the sport. There are very, very few people who can say that. MVP, Rookie of the Year, the only man to hit 2 triples in one All-Star game. Also stole home 7 times in 1969. That's a funny story because Billy Martin started coaching, or it was the manager of the Twins. It was his first year, and he wanted to make a big impact. So he worked with Carew to try to teach him how to steal home. And Martin was such an aggressive guy. So and Carew stole home, I think it was 7 times, which was looked at as the record. I believe Ty Cobb had stolen home 7 times, but subsequently they gave him an extra steal of home. But from the all-time leaders of steals of home, Cobb's number 1, but the only player born after Jackie Robinson that's in the top 20 is Rod Carew. So, he did a lot of different things, and is a player from kind of a bygone style, like I'd said. With his cards, you have a lot of Topps issues throughout the 70s. You also have the Topps All-Star cards that he was on. And because he won all the batting titles, he's on a lot of leaders cards. I mean, he's on, every leaders card for batting average throughout the 70s. So that's 7 leaders cards he's on.
What are some of your favorites, like, that you have either in your collection, or is there a Carew card you don't have that you'd like to get? I know that's a bunch of questions. You can answer them in whatever order you feel like.
There's Carew cards that I would like to get in a higher grade. I have some that are ungraded, some that are graded. But for you have the rookie card, obviously, like I had talked about before. And it's funny on the rookie card here, the guy right there, Hank Allen to Carew's left is Richie Allen's brother. So that was kind of an interesting fact that I came about. But my favorite cards, I mean, there's so many. 71 Topps, I think, is a great card. It really, is a great set in general. And, I like that pose right there. He's just, very happy. You've got a bunch of Kellogg's cards as well. 72 Topps is one of my favorites as well. It's also a high number and one of his most desirable ones. And I'm a big fan of the 72 style of the cards.
Yeah, absolutely.
So that's, I like so many of them, honestly. The Ryan of the 72 is a fantastic looking card as well. So I think that, you can't go wrong with some of those early 70s cards, but in higher grades, they're getting more and more expensive. Even an 8 or something like that is getting more expensive.
Do you think that's a product of Carew being recognized, or just the crazy market we're in and everything's all Hall of Famer stuff is just kind of going nuts?
Yeah, I think with the passing of Henry Aaron, and then you saw when Aaron passed recently, May's cards jumped way up. And I know you did a podcast on this as well, and the impact of a player's passing on the values. And I think people are saying, hey, now's the time to pick up that Johnny Bench rookie. Now's the time to pick up that Carew rookie. And, the nicer centered copies are going to go, the ones that have, so I think that's probably has a lot to do with it. Fortunately or unfortunately, I mean, it is what it is, right?
Yeah, but, absolutely. I happen to have two Carew rookies, one just by itself, and I think it's a 4. Mm-hmm. And then I have a Carew rookie that's actually autographed, and it's a 5. The card's a 5. The auto's a 10.
Beautiful card.
The autographs, and that's something that I think right now autographs aren't going nuts like regular cards are. And I may be, letting the cat out of the bag here, but maybe I'll start something. But it just shocks me that autographs are more rare than cards, right? There's fewer signed Carew rookies than there are Carew rookies, right? Does that make you know what I mean? And so the fact that these aren't, it's not that it is more expensive than a regular Carew rookie in a similar grade, but it's not crazy more expensive. And that's kind of true across the autograph landscape. It just boggles my mind that the autographs have just not blown up. And I don't know if because kids don't care, these 20-somethings that are really driving a lot of this craziness or the higher end stuff. I don't know. I'm not complaining because I'm an autograph collector. I don't, and you are too, I know. So it's like, okay, it can stay cheap for me. That's no problem. It just kind of surprises me that the autographs and Carew's, he's a prolific signer, right? He's a prolific signer. He's done the national before. He has a lot of signed cards out there.
Yeah, and he does.
You can get those for, I would say, anything under $40. You're getting a good deal on a Carew auto, an on-card Carew autograph. I think that's a good deal, and to me, that's cheap. For a player of his caliber and his career. How many do you have Carew autographs in your collection?
I do. I've got an 8x10 that I got autographed from him when I was a kid at spring training back in.
That's awesome.
He autographed that along with a ball that I had. Real nice. I mean, just a real nice guy. We waited after practice, and his car was the only one there. He was the last one there. He had a Porsche, and on the back of the Porsche had his license plate was RC29. And so we waited, and he came out, and he had a bunch of bags. I'm 48 years old telling you about this story, so right. It made an impact on me. But he had all these bags, and he put them down, and he sat there. He signed 2 things for me and 2 for my buddy. He asked if we had any more, and he started talking to us, like typical ball players would. And that's been my experience with him. And you hate to hear about ball players, kids having bad experiences, but really haven't heard much bad about Rod Carew at all. So he's a very friendly guy. So I have that one. I have a couple others. I have a on-card auto, legendary cuts, lasting legends, and it's a jersey. But I think these can be had pretty cheaply, which I think is another reason why Carew is real. It's a real friendly player to collect. It's not breaking the bank, and then you can go out and get his cards. And it's not going to break the bank either, frankly. You can get a rookie card. What is a 4? A 4 goes a 4 or 5, maybe now going for somewhere in the neighborhood of $400 or $500.
Yeah.
And
not bad. You also got to think. I mean, he's 75 years old, right? And what's also cool is the 2 players. Both you and I are about the same age, and the 2 players we're talking about are about the same age, which is always. I guess that's the point. Is these players made such an indelible impact on us as young baseball fans, and that just carries on and carries on. And our generation, we know this is part of the whole explosion in the card market. Is our generation is now getting to the point where we have more disposable income. We're wanting to relive the past a little bit and connect to that. And this is a great way to do it because we all remember getting these cards when we were kids. And I think that's a big part of what's happening in the market.
I agree with you completely. I mean, I'll give you an example related to Carew. In 1977, it's interesting how Hall of Famers and inner circle Hall of Famers, you kind of look at what their accomplishments are. And you have a lot of great Hall of Famers, but they never had that signature season. And I think that, there's a lot of guys who are not making the Hall of Fame right now who never had a signature season. And it's kind of a big deal on your resume, I think, as a prospective Hall of Famer. Well, Carew in 1977 won the MVP, as you know, Mike, and a lot of the listeners know. But, just from a reminiscent perspective, that's in May of that summer, Star Wars came out. Rod Carew was assaulting 400 that summer. That summer, Rod Carew was on the cover of Time magazine, which, at the time is like the biggest magazine in the country, other than maybe that in Life, probably. And he tells a funny story about this, how he had, the day before the Time magazine shoot, he had played a baseball game and he had fouled the ball off home plate. It came back up, hit him in the lip. And his lip was all swollen, and he had to put ice on it for 3 hours before the shoot, which was happening 4 hours later. And so he's on the cover of Time magazine, and he's like, he points that you can still see my lip right there. It's red. So that was kind of funny. But also in that season, Reggie was having a great year as well. And then would go on to be Mr. October, officially become Mr. October, right? With the 3 home runs in one game. But Carew and him were talking late in the season, and Carew was hitting around 400 and having his best season yet. And Reggie said, "Well, I'm going to win the MVP." And Rod said, "I don't know, Jack. I'm doing pretty good. I might win it this year." And Carew ended up, of course, winning it with his best season yet.
Yeah, and he hit 388 for the year, which is hard to imagine. What kind of media craziness would that create today, right? If somebody was pursuing 400.
Yeah, I still think it would. If you reflecting back on the Sosa McGuire home run race, that was, regardless of the surrounding circumstances, everybody in the nation was fascinated by that. And if somebody was going after 400, I think you'd have the same kind of thing, because, and that's a quest for a whole season, just like hitting the home run record all for the whole season. Maybe Tony Gwynn could have done it. He was the closest, right? Since
94. Yeah, he was 394 in 94, but right before the strike. Yeah.
Yeah.
But I don't think anybody will ever hit 400 again, honestly.
It might be more difficult when you consider all the relief pitching, right? That's the matchups. I was watching a thing about Nolan Ryan. I was watching the highlights of the American League Championship Series of 1979. It was Ryan versus Palmer in the first game of the series. And I just was like, it was like the third inning, and the announcer said something like, Nolan Ryan has only given up a lead twice in his career in the 8th and 9th inning. That just blew my mind. Wow. First of all, that he's pitching that much, right? He's pitching complete game after complete game, but he's essentially throughout the 70s, late 60s and early 70s, he was more effective than the closer. He hadn't blown any games.
Yeah, I guess that we can start talking about Nolan Ryan a little bit, because growing up in Texas, Nolan Ryan was, bigger than life. An absolute legend in this state. And when he got, he started with the Mets as a young, wild rookie, and couldn't find the strike zone if he had a, map and a compass. And he, figured that out a little bit. He got traded to, or was he a free agent to the Angels? I can't remember. It's not important.
I didn't know. I looked up how he got to Houston and the circumstances surrounding that, because that's where he and Carew actually intersect. Their careers intersect finally. But I didn't know. I didn't recall how he went. I didn't recall why the Mets, let him go. I might have been control issues at the time. I'm not sure.
Well, he'd certainly had those. Blazing speed, that was never an issue for him in terms of his fastball. But he went to the Angels and he just flourishes, right? He sets the single season strikeout record, beats, goes past Koufax. Just amazing Ks. He ironically, I did some homework on this, because Curt Schilling, didn't get in the Hall of Fame this year. And I was like, you know what? I looked at Curt Schilling's career more in depth. And the truth is that Curt Schilling had just about as good a career as Nolan Ryan. Nolan Ryan's just lasted 10 seasons longer, you know, and that's the truth. I mean, Nolan Ryan, quite frankly, he was a barely above 500 pitcher record wise.
Mm-hmm.
But because of the just astronomical, mind boggling strikeouts that he did, I mean, he struck out 300 batters when he was 40 in a season. You know, I mean, it's just, he did things that the no hitters that, you know, every time, you know, Sandy Koufax in his prime, Nolan Ryan in his prime, they could have thrown a no hitter. You never knew when they were going to do it. It could happen any night, you know, depending on what was going on.
Yeah,
And
their careers did intersect with the 383 strikeout year. I believe his last start of the year, from what I read, he was pitching against the Minnesota Twins. And, you know, I guess he let up 3 runs early in the game. And then he went on to like strike out the side like 2 consecutive innings. And then the Angels came back, and then the game went in. He did not break the record yet. The game went into extra innings, and Ryan was still pitching. Wow. And then he got the 383rd strikeout in extra innings. And I believe they won. I'm not sure if they won the game or not, but that was the amazing thing to me. Again, you know, his pitch counts were crazy. I remember an interview with Tom Seaver, and they were asking Tom Seaver, what was your pitch count? And he said, I don't know. We didn't keep track. He said it probably was somewhere around like, I don't know, 130, 140. And then they said, well, what was Nolan's? And he said, I don't know, 160.
Yeah.
I mean, it's nuts.
And people think being a strikeout pitcher actually takes more work because you throw a lot more pitches, ironically, than a Greg Maddux guy that throws a moving, sinking fastball that creates a lot of ground balls, you know, and he's around the strike zone. Nolan wasn't. He walked a lot of guys too, right? And so you're walking guys, lots of pitches, wear and tear, and yet he pitched 27 seasons.
Mike, you grew up in Texas, right?
I did.
So was it when Nolan Ryan came to the Astros that you really began to see him even more and just that became a bigger fan, or how did that work?
Yeah, because that was 1980. He came to Houston. He was the first player to ever receive $1 million contract, $1 million. That was a big deal. And, you know, Houston brought him home. I mean, he's from Alvin, Texas, which is outside of Houston. And so that was a huge deal for the state. But I'll tell you, I really became a Ryan fan when he became a Texas Ranger. Mm-hmm. And I think the Astros basically thought he was finished. Mm-hmm. Nolan said, no, I'm not. And his work ethic and was just unbelievable. And the stories that were told of how he would stay. He was always the last guy to leave, and in the gym and working out in between starts, et cetera, which is how he got to pitch so long and stay dominant, you know, into his 40s. His incredible work ethic, and he just had a arm that was, you know, a spaghetti string. He didn't. I mean, he had injuries late in his career for sure. I mean, it wasn't like he pitched, you know, full seasons, but in terms of, I bet no one in the history of baseball threw more pitches than Nolan Ryan in their career. And his cardboard career is incredibly prolific because he starts in 68. He's on the famous, you know, dual rookie card with Jerry Koosman, who also had a tremendous baseball career as well, longtime pitcher in the major leagues. So you got the Koosman Ryan rookie card on 68. Not a cheap card anymore. Yeah, there's yours. Yeah.
There we go. Same thing. Bought this thing at a show.
Here, let's put them up
3 years ago of a guy.
Yeah, Nolan.
There you go. Double Nolans.
Double Nolans. It's kind of one of those cards that I think a lot of people have in their collections, right? I mean, it's kind of that. It's a very iconic card and has been for a long, long, long time. And so it's been a well-known rookie card for as long as I can remember. And
yeah, I think kind of what you were saying about Nolan Ryan going to the Rangers and you becoming such a huge fan at that point, even a greater fan, you know, and I remember, you know, we're about the same age, and I can just remember how Ryan was just I mean, to strike out 300 guys at that age, to be that dominating. I was playing fantasy baseball with my friends, and he'd be at the bar, I'd look, and Ryan was pitching, and he has 13 strikeouts. And you're like, how does a guy who's 42 strike out 13 guys? And he would do it in like 7, 6 1/3, something like that. So, I think when he went to the Texas Rangers and elongated his career, he threw 2 more no-hitters in Texas?
He did, and 5,000 strikeouts, 300 wins. He hit all those milestones in Texas. In fact, he was the first player inducted to the Hall of Fame wearing a Texas Rangers cap, which kind of surprised me, honestly, when that, because the player has some choice in it. It's not completely up to them, but mostly up to them, I guess. And he wanted to be a Ranger because of the accomplishments that he achieved at wearing, the red, white, and blue of the Rangers. He is just and a super nice guy. He went on to be a part owner of the president of the Rangers, a part owner of the Rangers, and he would come to the ballpark every day. You could stand outside of the ballpark, and when he came to the office, he would sign autographs, and just a super great guy. Even though at this point he's a Hall of Famer, good grief, he's just a super super great guy. But continuing through his cardboard, he has his 68 card, and then that's a shared rookie card, just like Carew's, which a lot of collectors don't like multiplayer rookie cards, and I get it. You want a solo image of that player, and that makes sense. But so Carew's next card, or not Carew, sorry, Ryan, was the 69 Topps, very famous pose. In fact, it was used this year for Project 2020 as one of the iconic cards that they used for Topps. And this 69 Topps, I happen to have one that's signed by Nolan Ryan, and mine has a inscription on it that says Miracle Mets, because the 69, of course, the Mets went to the World Series. They'd been, doormats of the National League, and they won the World Series behind Tom Seaver. Nolan Ryan wasn't very critical. In fact, he only pitched one game in the World Series, ironically, but he saved that game. But he wasn't a huge factor on that team. He was still young and trying to figure things out in the major leagues. Then you got cards like his iconic 1970 Topps, which is, I think, a semi-high number. No, it's a high number in 70 Topps. So his 70 Topps is really expensive. 69 Topps is pretty expensive because it's his first solo card, just as Carew's 68 Topps is very sought after because it's not only his first solo card, it's a cup card. He's got the Topps rookie cup on that card, right? And you back with me, George?
Yeah, I am.
Okay. But the Carew card, the Carew 68 has the rookie cup, right?
It does. The rookie cups have become such a collectible thing recently. It's very interesting to me. But I always thought this was a really nice image rookie cup. And I think it's undervalued as well. I mean, you can get a copy probably, a 7, a higher grade. These days, a 7 of a 1960s card is a pretty solid grade, and
sure.
You can get it reasonably. So yeah, it's a rookie cup. How was his rookie year? Do you recall, Mike?
Yeah, he was not that great, honestly. His first few seasons actually were unremarkable, really. Then he just exploded, and once he went to the Angels, it was a whole new ball game for him. But he has his last Mets card is the 71 Topps, and then he's got Angels cards through the 70s. His first Topps card officially is 81 Topps on the Astros, but he actually has an 80 Topps card. The Burger King card is his real first card with the Astros, and I have that card as well. But it's amazing. His career was so long. His last Topps card was 94 Topps, and what's great is he retired the same year as Robin Yount and George Brett, all of which went into the Hall of Fame class of 1999. I mean, what a great class. You got 3 just amazing players, different players, right? Different kinds of players. And so that longevity within cardboard, there's just so many cards you can get. In fact, his PSA set registry, just his basic set registry, it's called his basic and collector issues set, is 145 cards. Like,
wow.
His master set which is a master set on a set registry, is just their playing days cards, not anything issued, post career, is almost 2,400 cards large. Because Nolan Ryan was on everything. Remember in the 90s, especially the late 80s, early 90s, Topps even did a commemorative set in 1990. The first, just like they had done with Pete Rose, they had done it with Hank Aaron in 74. They didn't do it exactly the same where they showed all of his Topps cards, but they had a Nolan Ryan base card, a Nolan Ryan with the Mets card, a Nolan Ryan with the Angels, Astros, and Rangers.
Yeah, they had the same thing with Carew in 91 Bowman. They had like a 5 or 6 card set. I guess that's the issue with Pudge's rookie and Jones and Tomei. And they had a Carew set in there. And I remember that was it 1990? I had a Ryan here somewhere from 1990 Topps, and it goes through his career as well. So it just seemed like they had, it wasn't just cards either, I was doing some research on the candy lids, and John Mangini had a video about the 1973 and 72 candy lids, Topps candy lids that were, really rare. There were Slurpee coins. There were Donruss had the large big cards. I mean, there was so much collectible stuff between these 2 players during these 2 eras.
Yeah, they went through all the junk wax era together, right? Well, Carew finished in 86, but so he was at the very beginning of it. Nolan went through all of it. I mean, you could get Nolan Ryan's picture on damn near anything. And even all the Broder cards, the fake cards that weren't real cards, but somebody just took a picture and turned it into a card. There were tons and tons of those. What's great about Nolan Ryan even today, and again, he just turned 74, so don't let this opportunity pass you by, but Nolan Ryan signs through the mail, through his foundation, $75. And to me, that is an absolute steal. You can buy his autographs for cheaper, but you can get a Nolan Ryan autograph on what you want, right? That's a flat is $75 for a picture or card or whatever. And I have one here just to show you what it looks like. So here's it's an old Topps co-signers card or whatever, but you can see at the bottom it's signed by Nolan Ryan. And on the back, when they do that, anytime you send a Nolan Ryan item in, they're going to give you this little Nolan Ryan hologram that they'll put on each item that he signs, so it's legit. And Nolan has such a beautiful signature. It's iconic looking signature. He signs the same every time. And there's tons of Ryan stuff out there. I mean, he's again a prolific signer, just like Rod Carew was. But that doesn't mean you should fall asleep on it either. His stuff is relatively expensive just because of the popularity. He's so popular in the hobby. He's his era is Mickey Mantle in terms of the hobby popularity, I would argue.
Yeah, I agree with that. When you look at we were talking before the podcast of who, the greatest pitchers of the 70s and in the 80s, Steve Carlton, Jim Palmer, Tom Seaver, among others. You've got Catfish Hunter, and you've got all these, other great pitchers, but his longevity makes his records untouchable. I mean, is anybody ever going to get to 5,700 strikeouts? It's not. I mean, it's like getting Cy Young's wins total. It's just impossible in my mind, especially these days. Starting pitchers are pitching 5 innings. So he's just, he became this Mickey Mantle, and his records became almost Ruthian, in a way. And I think you see that in his cards. The value of his cards just continue to rise. And early card, here's an example of one I had. You showed a 69 off, and this is one I picked up early last year, a 69 Ryan, and I tried to get it as high of a grade as I could. But I probably wouldn't buy this card at this point because it's gone up. I mean, like everything has, not everything, but Ryan, I think, is just a I think it's still a great investment, though. I mean, he's got records that are never going to be broken.
Yeah. Ryan, I think, even as much of a fan as I am, I still think, was he the greatest pitcher of the 70s and 80s, or in even early 90s? There are people that say yes. I don't know that that's true. And mainly for me, it's more of a wins issue, because people say wins don't matter. And I'm like, well, isn't that the point of playing the game, is to win the game? And with pitchers pitching the way that they did in that era, unlike today you could say that a pitcher's wins may or may not reflect accurately how good of a pitcher he is.
Jacob deGrom.
Right. Jacob deGrom. Felix Hernandez won a Cy Young with an under 500 record, right? Mm-hmm. So I think it's different today, but remembering back when 20 wins was a big deal when we were kids, right? Yeah. And that showed, not always, because Carlton won 27 games on a team that won 54 or whatever it was, with the Phillies or the Cardinals. I can't remember. The Cardinals.
1972.
Yeah. So but that's an anomaly. That was an anomaly in that era. If you won 20 games, you were leading your team to, success. Maybe not necessarily a pennant, but you were a above 500 team and that kind of thing. Of course, unless you were the Orioles, you had 4 guys that won 20 games in the season, right?
Yeah, they had a stacked offense, and they had a great manager. And I mean, if you got Frank Robinson, you get a chance to win.
That's right.
Brooks Robinson. And to your point about Ryan and the wins, I agree with you. They're very important. They're important in that era, in my opinion. And I think it has a lot to do his maybe lack of what you would think. You would think he would have more wins. I mean, he's on the California Angels, and the California Angels are just a team that is lacking in talent, and he's really doing well for this team. Was his ERA the lowest? Did he win a pitching triple crown? No, he never did. But the 393 strikeouts, I mean, that's beyond amazing. But he didn't. I don't know if he had a choice to go to the Angels or not. And then finally, when he did get the choice to go somewhere in 1980, it was important to get paid appropriately, because free agency was real new. And he was the first $1 million player. And the guy who was the highest paid player in 1979, right before Nolan Ryan became the highest paid player, was Roger Carew. Yeah. So, and that was the only time they ever were together. They intersected only. Carew had the second most at bats against Ryan of anybody all time. Brett had the most amount of at bats. And their careers finally intersected in 1979 when they were on the Angels together. And the Angels won their division, and then lost to the Orioles in the ALCS. Ryan went on to Houston and got paid a lot of money. I think Carew had signed an $800,000 contract, but that was another story. And he ended up getting traded to the Angels. It was going to be the Yankees, but that didn't work out. And George Steinbrenner didn't want to pay Carew. And then eventually it ended up, was the Giants or the Angels Carew was going to go to, ended up being the Angels. Gene Autry didn't mind spending money to get players, which he would later, get Reggie, get Doug DeCinces, get, all these really great offenses. Don Sutton.
Yes. But I would say if I was to kind of try to think about my favorite Nolan Ryan cards, my favorite Nolan Ryan card is in 1989 Upper Deck. He has a high number card where he is throwing a football. And I think that is one of those just amazing. Back then in the 80s, the Rangers pitching coach was a guy named Tom House, who to that point was probably most famous for catching Aaron's 715th home run in the bullpen at Atlanta Fulton County Stadium. But he was the Rangers pitching coach. And one of the drills that he had all the Rangers pitchers do was throw the football, because if you can throw, this was Tom House's theory, that if you can throw a football with a perfect spiral, then you are using the correct mechanics to throw a baseball. And so the Rangers pitchers, just sit around and toss the football around. And there's this great iconic snapshot of Nolan Ryan throwing a football on that 89 Upper Deck high number card. And I remember wanting his Rangers card so bad. He was in 89 Topps Traded as a Ranger. That was his first Rangers card, and wanting to have that card. I have it now in a Gem Mint 10, just because, not because it's necessarily valuable, but it's valuable to me. And those 89 the 89 Upper Deck high number, his 89 Upper Deck regular card is with the Astros. And it's another great card because it's one of those multi-picture, cards, like a multi-exposure cards. Great card.
Is this the one you're talking about, Mike?
Yes, that's the one I'm talking about. That's it.
Right there.
The 89 Upper Deck Nolan Ryan.
I'd forgotten about this card and that it even existed. And before we, a couple days ago, I just started going through Ryan stuff and I was like, wow, this is a very cool card. It's got at least 3 pictures on it.
Yeah, it's really cool. And then, so he was in the Upper Deck. He even made it to the Upper Deck era. And then the Score and, all the new manufacturers that were Leaf and all that kind of stuff. He has cards, so many different cards. And Stadium Club. I mean, you name it. He bridged so many eras of cardboard. But that's probably my favorite. I love any of the vintage stuff. I have a 72, which you mentioned earlier, how much you love his 72 Topps. I have one of those somewhere here. I don't know where it went. Maybe I don't. But he's got some great, autograph stuff. I mentioned how his autographs, these beautiful, like Donruss Signature Series cards from 98. And these can be had $100 probably. Sometimes maybe a little less, sometimes maybe a little more. But to me, that's still not crazy for a player of that legendary stature, right?
Oh, I agree with you completely. Here's one I picked up. This cost me $80. It's an 84 Donruss Nolan Ryan in a Gem Mint 10. The card's okay. I mean, I'm not grading the card, but it's a nice, it's, the classic Donruss set, and it's a great signature. It's not inscribed, but yeah, $80. I mean, I thought, wow, that's a steal. I can't turn that down.
I remember you getting that card and showing it, and me being quite jealous actually of you having that. I loved it. I was like,
oh, Donruss, man, if you could find in 84, if you could find Donruss packs, you were lucky.
Yep.
That's a great
75 Topps Nolan Ryan I have signed as well. Now his player era cards signed are relatively pricey. You're going to pay well over $100 for some of those, especially the earlier Topps stuff. But again, he's not getting any younger. Neither is Carew. And we just really want to try to highlight some of these players that, not that people forget about, but I think people are paying so much attention these days to the high end of the market, the super big cards, the rookie cards, stuff like that. Like you said about Carew, there's great ways to collect Nolan. There's plenty of relatively cheap Nolan Ryan stuff you can go get if you want to get some players of one of the greats of all time, right?
Yeah, and from a reverse perspective, these are also, you can get cheap. They both played so long that you can get cheap cards of both of them, and you can also get investment cards of both of them. And I'm not just talking about rookies. Here's an example: a nice 74 Carew and a PSA 9. This card was almost nothing like 2 years ago, and now I don't know. It's probably a couple $100.
Right.
The cards that you can, you can still invest in players like this too, maybe get a high grade. I love the All-Star banner on these cards, 81 and 80. This is probably my favorite Nolan Ryan card, is the 1980 Nolan Ryan. The All-Star banner is so cool. And he didn't, there were so many great pitchers. And when they did the All-Star banner thing, it was only one pitcher, right, in the American League and one pitcher in the National League. So you had to be the best pitcher pretty much.
Right.
So
I have 3 of that 80 Topps Nolan Ryan slab because I love it so much.
Great.
I love it. So, yeah, I mean, first of all, George, thanks for coming on with me and just talking through this. And we both got to share some great stories and cardboard and you name it about these two great players. Any final thoughts you want to throw out there for people?
Well, I want to thank you again for having me on. I really appreciate it. It's a lot of fun. It's just a lot of fun to hang out and talk cards, and especially of, great players like this who span so much, have so many eras. So, I just think, you keep trying to, I mean, it's time to learn more about these great older players. If you're younger, it's time to look them up a little bit, don't wait until they pass away. Look at what they did. You'll be shocked, when you see Carew's name along with Cobb, Wagner, Ted Williams, Stan Musial regarding batting titles, or when you look at Nolan Ryan and the strikeouts and how much farther he is up. There's a big difference between him and Randy Johnson and
Absolutely.
Roger Clemens, so I really appreciate you having me on, Mike. It's been a lot of fun, and I hope we can do it again sometime.
You bet. Well, everybody out there, man, thanks for listening. Everybody watching, if you're on YouTube, leave some comments down below. Let us know what you thought about this episode. Let us know what players you might want to see me highlight again or in the future episodes of Golden Age of Cardboard podcast. So until the next time, hope everybody out there has a great one. Keep collecting.